Hey everybody, Mark Van Wagner from the Utah State Hospital Greenhouse and Gardens in Provo, Utah. Today what I'd like to do is cover some of the basics on seed sowing, some of the different containers that you can use in seed sowing, some soils that are good to help you with those different seeds, and then transplanting. So it'll give you an idea of going from the seed to a seedling to transplant and then being able to plant it in your garden. And so I've got a different variety of different containers here that we can use. And the first one I'd like to start with is this one right here. Now, this is called a 128 seedling tray. And what we do with this is we'll fill it with some germination mix. It's the Sunshine No. 3 germination mix that allows us to be able to plant our seeds in each one of these different cells. Now, the germination mix that we have is a nice soil where it has a lot of peat moss in it and a lot of vermiculite. It does have a slight nutrient charge to it, but don't let that nutrient charge get you all excited that you're not going to have to fertilize, because that's not the case. Once the seedlings germinate or sprout and they start to grow, you want to be able to fertilize them, because the nutrient charge doesn't really last that long in this type of soil. With the No. 3 germination mix from Sunshine, it's a fine soil that you can use to be able to take and put your soil inside of your tray, and then you just you don't have to pack it down or press it into the cells, but you just kind of fill it up here, and then it allows you to have a nice surface there to be able to plant your seed in. Now, if we want to plant a little jalapeno pepper here, we can take that and open this, pack it up. You can get your seeds from just about anywhere that provides seeds in your different stores, but I like to try to get at least one seed in each cell, unless you feel like you want to plant a few more. If you get 2 in one, that's okay. Not a big deal, because you can always transplant it as it gets larger, but that's kind of the way you want to do it as you plant your seeds in that soil in your cell. So this is a 128. And then, of course, you just want to take and just sprinkle a little soil on those seeds. They like to be covered. And then we'll wet it in with a nice little misting nozzle that we'll put on the end of our hose. And then we'll put it on our table or our counter where we want to grow them. Make sure that they stay warm. The seeds like to be warm when they're growing. It helps for the germination rate. And it also helps so that they germinate just a little bit quicker. I've got a tray here of onions that we planted the other day, and if you can look closely in there, you can see the black seed, the onion seed. Now, this is one of my favorite, the Walla Walla, and I do what's called direct sowing with my onions.
So the onions are right on the surface?
They're right on the surface. That's your little black seeds that you can see right there, and I plant about 10 or 15 in each one of these little 4-inch containers. So that it gives me a good germination rate on onions is probably about 89 to 93%. But I plant that many in there because I usually plant a lot of onions throughout the year, or at the beginning of the year, so I can have them for all my canning. You don't cover them. Okay, so this is a 128. So now you at home thinking, okay.
That's a lot of seedlings.
That's a lot of seedlings. But the thing is you don't have to plant all tomatoes, all peppers, all petunias, or all anything in this one. You can split it up. And you notice that it's got a little line down here in the middle, a little groove. You could plant maybe jalapenos on this side, and then you could plant bell peppers on this side, or you could break it in half or section it off. So this side you have bell peppers, this side you have jalapenos, this side you have a red pepper, and this one you have the scorpion pepper that one of my friends really enjoys. Now this one is getting really serious. This is typically the one we use in the greenhouse a lot, and this is actually a shallow cell, which means it's shallow right here. Some are deeper, but this is a 288 cell tray. In fact, right here, here's a tray of, I believe it's Ancho Grande, the Poblano. That's a really good one for your salsas. And if you notice, here's that 288 cell, and there's 280 plants right there, Poblanos. They've been planted since, let me make sure I read this right, since March the 3rd. So you get an idea of what your plants can look like in 20 days, 24 days of planting. okay? And so that's the 288, the 128 tray, and then here's a trough tray. I have a friend that really likes to use these a lot because he's not very steady with his seeds. And so he can't get just one seed per cell in there. So what he can do with this trough tray is he can just take and just sprinkle the seeds in this trough right here. And if he's got different variety of seeds, different pepper seeds that he wants to plant, maybe he can do one with jalapenos, one with bell peppers, one with Anaheims, and so on and so forth. And then it allows the plants to be able to root up in the bottom. It's deep enough that you have a deep enough root base for your seedlings. And then you can take each one of those out. And in our transplanting segment, I'm going to show you how to transplant a seedling without the soil around it. It's pretty fun. So got lots of good stuff coming up for you. So overwatering tends to be, I hate to say this, but in Utah, we're in a desert state, and out of all the 48 contiguous states, we seem to be the state that overwaters everything. We see something wilting, needs water, so we water it more. But that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes you water too much and it wilts because the cells are full inside the plant's system, and so it can't take up any more water. It can't transpire as fast by letting water out of its cells, and so it says stop, stop, and then it just wilts, and that's its sign that, hey, I've got too much. But then on the other hand, if a plant's wilting, you might not have enough. So the best thing to do that I like on here is when I'm looking at my soil, say for instance I've got my plants in here, okay, and I've got my plant in here and it's wilting on me. The best thing I like to do is I like to dig my finger in the soil. Even though the surface might be dry, underneath probably isn't. And it's usually about a half an inch to an inch down into the soil. And so if your plant's wilting, don't water it. Stick your finger in your soil and see if it's got too much water, and then back off a little bit and let it dry out a little bit more. Yeah, the drier you keep the surface of your soil and your plants, the less opportunity you have of having pests like the fungus gnat or other bugs that come in. Because plants will send off a warning that they're in distress. So whether they've been hit by a bug, a bug starts to eat them, they send out a distress signal that other plants pick up on and that other bugs pick up on. I mean, it's a crazy ecosystem that's out there in the plant world that they're talking to each other. And they're telling each other, be prepared, there's a pest coming in and he's eating me up. So they'll send off some kind of a signal to all these other plants. And so with the moisture, if it's too wet, it sends out a signal that, hey, I'm too wet, I can't transpire. And then all of a sudden the fungus gnat picks up on that and he comes in with his family and they start feeding on your soil and then on your plants. Don't let it dry out, but because then you start to stress the plant's growth pattern. If the roots stay too wet, then they call that wet feet on a plant. And when your plant has wet feet, they can't get the air that they need to grow, and then they start to drown, just like you and I would if we went down underneath and didn't come up for air. Your plants don't get enough air that they need so that they can continue to grow. That's called wet feet, okay? Not to be confused with cold feet, okay? Water. Well, you can have a thing called dampening off, where it rots right around the base of the plant where the soil is, because the soil stays so wet that it starts to rot the stem of the plant. It's grown on top because there's still just a little bit of nutrients and all that stuff going up that it needs. But if it dampens off, has dampening off problem, then it will rot right around that stem and it'll kill it and it'll just tip over. So you can direct sow your seeds into the 606 container and just let them grow. Get your plants, a nice 8 to 10 inches, however tall you like them before you transplant them. And then you can just transplant directly from here into your garden. A lot of times with the smaller seed trays, you transplant from here into this, and then from this into your garden. And then another tray that we use is this one here. This is called an 1801 tray. Now, It's about a 3.5-inch tray, cell that is. And we'll plant a lot of our vine crops. In fact, most of our vine crops we sell in the greenhouse, we plant in this little container right here. It's about 3 inches deep, 3 inches square, 3.5 inches square, and I'll put a couple of pumpkin seeds, I'll put a couple of squash seeds. If I'm doing melons, I'll do 3 seeds for my melons. Because sometimes you have a melon plant that dies, then you have 2 there left over, so you make sure you have the amount of melons that you want. That's a good question, because a lot of people have that issue, and a lot of the problem is that it's the hardening off. Now, hardening off is, see, we have a really nice environment here in the greenhouse. It's around 75 to 78 degrees constantly in the greenhouse. And so when you're taking these plants, especially the squash, all your vine plants, your cucumbers, your squash and melons, you take them out and it's 80, 85, 90 degrees out in the garden. You take that plant out of this nice cozy greenhouse environment and stick it out there with the direct sun, it's just gonna kill it. It's called sun scald, sunbake. And so what you want to do is you want to take your plants after you've bought them, whether you buy them from us here at the greenhouse, at the state hospital, or you go to other garden centers, you want to harden them off. So you take those plants out, let them sit in the sun for about 30 to 60 minutes. Bring them in. Then the next day, let them go out for another 30 to 60 minutes, then bring them in. And then over a couple, 2 or 3, 4 day period, you up that time to then after 2 days or so, you give them 2 hours. You bring them in, and maybe 3 hours. And then by that time, they're used to that hot sun. Whereas in here, even though in a greenhouse, you've still got the sun shining through the roof because of the polycarbonate sheeting that lets all the light in, it's still a protected environment with the cooler temperatures in here.
Our neighbor has his Red Rider wagon, and he just wheels that out and back. And out
There you
and
go.
back. Yeah,
It depends on how much work you want to do. You want to pick
can.
them off your garage or your shop floor and bend over and pick them up, take them out and bend over. Yeah, put them on a cart, put them on a wheelbarrow with a big piece of plywood on there with all your plants on there, just wheel them out. Problem is, you got to be dutiful. You can't forget them. And the reason they call it an 1801 is because there's 18 of these in each insert that goes into your web tray. Okay, this is a web tray, and this is nice to have because it supports these inserts, especially when you fill these full of soil and then they get wet. It's a lot harder to carry these around than if you had this nice little web tray to put them in. It gives them all the support that you need. Another size of container is what we call our 3-inch. This is actually 2.5 by 2.5 by 3.5 deep. Nice because it gives you a really nice deep root system. And we use these a lot here at the greenhouse because I know some people don't want to go out and get 6 jalapeno peppers. They want 1 or 2. And so they can buy one of these with a jalapeno or 2, and then they can get other types of plants that they need. And then the next one is we have our 4-inch, which again, like we showed you on our onions, is actually a 3.5 by 3.5 square. It's about 4 inches deep. I direct sow all my onions in this size of container because it allows the root system, it's big enough with the soil in there, it allows my onion starts to really get a nice root on the bottom of them. So we're going to talk about a few soils here today so that you can understand what's the right soil for me to use. Let's start out with this one right here. So we talked about this one for germinating your seeds. It's the Sunshine number 3 germination mix is what it's called. And remember, it's got peat moss. That's the fine ground up. You want the finer stuff, and I'll explain why you want finer when you're planting seeds. It's got vermiculite. It holds water, and so it's a nice water retaining material in your soil. Now the next one is the Sunshine number 1 potting soil. You'll notice the little white specks. I'm going to dump some of this out for you, and you'll notice the white specks in here. In fact, I've got one just right here in my hand. This is called perlite. Now perlite is a volcanic material that they use in potting soils to help with aeration. The other soil here, we have a one that we find a lot at some of our box stores. It's called the Sunshine Black Gold All-Purpose Potting Mix. And this is nice. I like to incorporate that into my grow beds. If I'm doing grow boxes, raised beds, I like to incorporate the black gold into that because it's got more of the pumice, which is like the perlite. It's like a rock substrate, and that helps to provide pores in the soil in my grow boxes or my beds to help with aeration, to get the soil to have pockets of air for the roots. It's all about your roots. If your roots are dying and they're drowning, they're not getting what they need, then your plant's not going to survive. Another soil is the Metro Mix. Now I use, between the Black Gold and the Metro Mix, I'll combine these two together because the Metro Mix has some cinders in it. It's got some a lot of wood cinders in it to be a lot more airy. And with the Black Gold and the Metro Mix, it's just the right combination for my grow or my containers. A lot of people live in apartments. They don't have a garden, and so they'll grow their tomatoes and their peppers, their onions, and even corn and beets. I mean, there's no end to what you can grow in a big old round container on your patio. You can grow anything you want. The soil that I would most likely lend to in growing my garden is the Black Gold in my containers.
So if you were going to buy a soil and you're only going to buy one, that's your top
This
pick.
is my top
Black
pick.
Gold.
Yeah.
Is that pretty readily available?
Sure.
Is that Walmart?
You can go to Walmart, your box stores. You're going to find it probably a better price if you go to Steve Regan. Now I don't get paid to endorse Steve Regan. It's just that that's where I've bought all my materials for 20 years, and they just have everything that you need, and they've got good pricing there. I wouldn't use just Black Gold in my grow boxes. We've got 50 grow boxes out here in our garden at the state hospital. And we use a blend that we get from up in Hiram from Miller's. Everybody knows Miller's, the big beef company up in Hiram, up in Cache County. And they make a superb garden box mix that you can buy from them. You can get it in the bag at Lowe's. That's only who they sell through. They don't go through Home Depot. But they sell it at Lowe's. It's a good garden box blend is what it's called. So we're going to do a little transplanting of tomatoes. So what I want to do is I want to use my 606 because I want to take these and transplant them right into my garden. So I'll transplant my little seedlings into this. And what I like to use in this is I just like to use the #1 Sunshine Mix. I'll put this on top of there, and then I'll just kind of spread that out and so that it gets into all the different cells that are on here, okay? And then I want to be careful when I'm doing this because these edges are sharp. And just kind of go like that and you're ready to go, okay? Now, I always like to pre-wet it because if you don't pre-wet it, you're going to put a wet little seedling root ball in a dry soil. You might get distracted and get taken away from what you're doing, and you forget to water it in, and then you come back and everything's all wilted because you forgot to water it. So we're going to go out in the greenhouse and we're going to water this in, okay? You want some backing up here? Now, what I like to do is I like to get my hose, and I'll explain a couple of things about watering, okay? In the greenhouse or at home in your garden, wherever you're at. This is called a watering wand, okay? I'll take this part off because when you go to where I'm going to tell you to go to buy this doesn't come with it because there's different model numbers, okay? And then this is by itself. So this is the wand, okay? And if it helps, you want to know, I don't get endorsements from Dram, but it's a Dram Professional Choice. I believe this is a 36-inch watering wand, okay? I like that because it gives me the length if I'm watering far out and whatnot. I like to have a little shut-off nozzle. It's a brass shut-off nozzle. Again, not part of this. There's 3 components here. You get all these components at Steve Regan. okay? And I'm not sure the price. You could pay $8 or $10 for the shut-off valve. You could pay 10 or 12 bucks for the wand. And then you have what's called a breaker. Now this is the silver breaker, and this is the one I use in the greenhouse. It's the one I use out in my garden. They call it a breaker because if I were to take and turn my water on, I'm going to have a really hard, fast stream of water that if I'm doing any seedlings or soil, I'm going to have the water just going to come out like this right here, and that's just going to wash everything away. So this breaker breaks that solid stream into little tiny streams that allows you to do the job without washing all your soil down onto the floor out of your containers. Okay, so we turn that on, and I like to have just about a nice little shower about like that right there. And I don't want to turn it on too full because then I'm washing all my soil out of the container, the flat. And so I'll turn that on about like that right there, and then act like it's raining, like a shower, and just go over my flat like this. Because if I go like this, then I start washing that soil. You kind of see that soil washing out of those cells, and I don't want that. So I like to come over it, go over it a couple, 2 or 3 times, let the soil or the water sink in, and it will. And then I go ahead and turn that off, okay? They go by the holes. They go by how many holes that are in there. I don't remember right off the top of my head what this one is, but I always say use the silver one. They got a blue one and a red one and a silver one and a black one. All right, so now I've got this water. Sometimes you might want to just let it kind of just sit, let it just kind of so it's not so mushy and drippy underneath there. But we're going to take this and go back into the classroom where we're going to transplant. Got our nice wet tray. We're going to put our seedling root balls in there, and it's going to provide a nice little wet bed for them to get a good kick start. So what I like to do at this point is I like to take my finger, okay, and I'll take and I will poke a hole down. I don't want to go too far down because I want the roots to be able to have a place down here to grow as well. But I'll poke a hole in all of these little cells here with my finger, and that will be a little bit gentler on the root ball of the plant that I'm planting, so I'm not just pushing it in there, and then the soil is resisting you pushing in that root ball on that plant. Okay. Now sometimes your plants need a little help coming out of their little trays, and if you'll notice at the bottom here, there's holes. Each one of these has a small hole in it, small enough to use a pencil. Okay, and I use the wood end. I don't really, I mean, either end will work, but what I like to do is push that pencil in that hole, and then that dislodges my root ball. The problem that we have sometimes, whether we get in a hurry or we aren't paying attention, is we'll grab the stem of that plant and jerk that out. Sometimes you can pinch the stem, that kills your plant. If your roots are white like this, that's a nice looking root. If they're brown or orange, or I call it sickly looking, then there's something going on with your plant. And I almost wouldn't even plant that if that were the case, because I would be struggling with something from here until it's time to try to bear fruit. Then I'll take that nice little root ball, and I'll put it here in the plug, in this little hole, and I'll just kind of make that just a little bit bigger because my root ball is a little bigger. And then I'll just carefully put my 2 fingers on the side of the plant like this, and I'll just put that right there in the soil, just like that. Now tomatoes you can plant deeper. Tomatoes and peppers are 2 of the few plants that you can plant deeper up the stem. And what's nice is as you do that, it also provides a way for more roots to come out the side of the stem. So if you've got some really tall plants and you're wondering, man, what am I going to do with these tall plants because I'm in a windy area? Dig your hole 2 or 3 or 4 inches deeper and just set them down in there, and then that will help to solidify the plant in its hole. Let's show you another technique that sometimes you're going to get these little seedlings and there's not going to be a whole lot of soil on them. Okay, I'm going to just kind of take a lot of this off. I'm going to try to salvage my roots. Okay, Or if you get in a hurry and you're pulling these out by their neck, I call it, and all the soil falls off, don't throw that away. That's still a good plant. You're going to get lots of tomatoes out of that thing. So what I like to do is I like to sit it right on my soil like this right here. Okay, in fact, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of these. Not a whole bunch, but I'm gonna make enough of them so we can have a fun little planting. Because you're gonna do that. See how I'm pulling these off and the soil's coming right off of them? That's gonna happen. Your kids are gonna help you and they're gonna pull it off and you're gonna yell and scream at them. Don't yell and scream at your kids, okay? They're learning just like you did when you were a kid. And then you're gonna just put these in here like this, and then you're gonna have your plants laying on the soil. Now, I like to use a pencil that's sharp, okay? See the sharpened end? Because what you're gonna do, you're gonna take your sharp end of the pencil and you're gonna put it close to the stem where the roots and the stem meet. You're gonna put that right there and you're gonna push that down in the soil and you're gonna have it planted just like that. So what you're doing is you're not placing it on the stem because then you're gonna break and kink the stem. Then your plant's gone. But you want to put it right about there. So yeah, so it almost splits the roots, but you're still having a lot more on the bottom of the root system where you take it like this and then you just gently just take it and push it down in there. And then you can actually twist your pencil if you want. And remember, you can plant your tomatoes deeper. Here's our last one here. Just put that on there like that and just push that down into the soil. If you want, you can straighten it up. Some people like to be real particular about how their plants are, and you might even want to just kind of cover up that hole. But I'm going to show you what we're going to do. I'm going to plant some more tomatoes in here. We're going to go back out in the greenhouse because typically you don't have to sit here and push the soil and make it all nice and cozy, you know, because when you go out to water the plants in, it washes the soil around your root ball, and that's all you got to do. You don't have to do any more until it's ready to plant again. This is fun stuff. You know, you get lost in this stuff, and as you can get your kids involved in it, that's really what it's all about, is getting your kids involved too, because nowadays too many kids are stuck in front of a TV because that's the babysitter for all of us parents. We think that that's going to take care of our problems and our kids are going to not get into trouble if they go outside, right? They need to be outside. They need the soil. They need that. It's called horticulture therapy. Okay. All right, let's take this. We'll go back out into the greenhouse. Now, we talked about too much water. You know, we've dampened our soil down pretty good. In fact, if you want, we could take this right here and let's see, I can take this right here. I'll show you how damp this soil is all the way through. So if we go like this and just pull that up, you can see there might be one little spot in the corner here, but this soil is pretty damp, okay? Which is okay. But you want to take in consideration, how much do I really want to water these plants? Because it will take 3 or 4 or 5 days for that soil to start drying out. We've just put in these nice little seedlings in this tray, and then all of a sudden we're going to drown them. So what I like to do there is I like to just take my wand, turn it on like I normally do, like this, and I'm just going to go just like that right there, and I'm done. Okay, I don't want to put any more water on there, and I want to go fast enough that I'm not keeping it on there and sopping it up. We'll turn around just a little bit, and I'll show you the fruits of your labors, because right here we've got some awesome tomato plants growing. They're in a gallon container. I've used the #1 sunshine mix with a little bit of the black gold mix in there. Now the nice thing about it is we've got them on a bamboo stick, so when you get them in the next month or so, if you don't take them outside because we're still going to get frost, you can still grow them inside. Take them outside during the day, let them harden off for a little bit, bring them back in. Plus, it allows you to have a nice little structure for your fruit. That's going to be your stems are going to be a lot bigger for that nice big tomato that you're going to put on that stem. Another important thing that you want to remember when you're transplanting is that you make sure you always write a tag. Okay? Different types of tags that you can get. You can get a box of these down at your local co-op store, Steve Regan. They're $30 or so for 1,000. The thing you want to do is make sure you use a pencil to write on these and not a Sharpie. Not even your best fade resistant Sharpie, because they will still fade. Sometimes we get a little stressed out about our gardens as spring arrives. We're not sure what to do. We're not sure about bugs or insects. We're not sure about pathogens or soil diseases or air diseases. And so these are a couple of websites that I recommend that you go to from Utah State University. They're pretty descriptive. They spell it out pretty well. Navigate through it, become familiar with it. If you're wanting to prune your fruit trees, they'll tell you how to prune your pears, how to prune your apples and your peaches and your nectarines and your kumquats and your pluots and all your other aughts. So horticulture therapy is getting lost outside, getting lost in nature, is getting your hands dirty, is forgetting what's in your mind that you have issues with, and losing yourself in your garden. It's watching a bee pollinate another plant. It's watching a butterfly eat the nectar off of a honeysuckle. It's watching your plants grow. It's getting out with your family and enjoying that time to be outside in nature. And so the horticulture therapy, or hort therapy as they call it, provides an opportunity to just get out in nature and experience being a part of nature. That's what it's all about.